Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. And this week, we are going to have a bit of a preview of TinTech London market, which is coming up on the 8th of February. But as always, let's start with the news. So to begin with, well, firstly, I would say I'm a bit happy today because of the announcement that you don't have to work from home anymore.
Yay!
People can come along to the conference, and they've been booking up today, so that's good. So I think we've turned a corner. So that's we
have
shall
you seen a surge.
We have, yeah. We booked 15 people just on the back of that this morning. So, we've just tipped over the 100 mark. So,
brilliant!
Looking good for that. So that's the first bit of news, and we'll come back to TinTech London market. But our first real bit of news is we're back on Lloyd's again. So last week we talked about this deal with Lloyd DXC and everyone else in the London market to provide some technology. And then this week we learned that there's going to be a shake-up of the organizational structure there. So Jennifer Rigby, Chief Operating Officer, is leaving and being replaced by Burkhard Klies, who's a Chief Financial Officer.
Right.
Who's going to take responsibility for technology and operations. But Bob James is still going to be running the transformation agenda. So,
well, it's unusual to see a shake-up at the top of Lloyd's, isn't it?
It is.
Doesn't happen more than once every 6 months or 3 months.
Yeah, and it's funny that they're putting a finance director in for an operations role as well. It kind of gives you a flavour of where they're thinking in terms of saving money and costs.
It's interesting. I don't know what. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, the other bit of Lloyd's news, of course.
They do.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. The other bit of Lloyd's news was that they are thinking of giving up their building as well, which was baffling this week. I thought anyway.
This story keeps coming up, doesn't it? This. We're giving up the building. We're going. We're leaving. Keeps coming up. I don't know where they're going. There's none of that.
No.
But there's two articles actually in the FT this week. But originally it was in the a property trade magazine that I hadn't heard of. Not that I read those, and seemed to have been almost it was there, and then it got picked up by the national press.
Yeah.
But whether there's any real substance to it, there's no quotes from anybody at Lloyd's or anything about this to corroborate it. But there are two articles in the FT, so there was the reporting of it, and then there's another article today saying, it doesn't matter, and they could stay there for 10 years. The building doesn't matter, and they should just leave. Don't bother about the lease break in 2 years' time. Look at 2030 instead. That's what they say in the FT today.
Well,
funny sort of articles though. I don't really understand why it's being debated in public.
No, it's interesting. Normally, you just whenever I've leased a building, I haven't done it through the channels of the FT. Mind you, they haven't been interested.
No, it may be because it wasn't a big enough deal, Jeremy. That could have been it. But could have been. It's a bit, given that what's odd is that Lloyd's is pretty tight about its communications and PR, in my experience. So for this to be washing around and not to have any story or commentary, or anything from Lloyd's is a strange thing to be talked about. It's quite a big issue, obviously.
Yeah.
And don't you think it would unnerve people a bit in the market as to, are they going, are they staying? It's almost like the rumour's been written off now completely without actually any formal announcement of it being finished. Certainly in the second article today, that's what it seems to say. And I assume these journalists wouldn't write these stories unless they'd contacted the relevant sources.
Yeah, you would have thought so. I'm with you. It's a strange one, but we'll keep a watching brief, and you'll be first to know through the channel of Burgess and Bolton, as soon as we know, of course. And we're not that high up on the chain of people to find these things out. So take that what you want, really. Let's talk a bit about job ads, Ben. You saw this, which I thought was great.
Yes, I'm an avid reader of Nokia News. I don't even know that isn't even a thing. I thought they don't even make phones anymore. But anyway, Nokia News is still going strong. Amazingly, I'm glad it's still going as well, because it's a good public. It's got some interest. It did have some interesting stories, particularly back in the day. But anyway, this story is about an insurance story, and this company, Phoenix Insurance, as they rise, presumably they rose from the ashes, is they banned these two words, energetic and enthusiastic, from their job ads. And this is to avoid alienating older applicants. That's people over 50. So that would include me, sadly. And they said it's not because people who are over 50's enthusiasm or energy wanes. It's just that it puts them off because they think it's aimed at young people.
Yeah.
And
I think they might have a point. I think energetic and enthusiastic, I think it does kind of have a subtext of youth and...
Yeah, I think there's a bit of over 50 you can't be asked quite a lot of the time. And you perhaps don't go for those sorts of cliches. I mean, there's a good point to it, and maybe we're more wise to this sort of stuff. And also there's a point about words being used in these ads, isn't there? That they could mean other things. Energetic and enthusiastic means
a HR case on the horizon.
Yeah, you're going to have to work 14-hour days non-stop. So basically, if you're over the age of 27, wouldn't bother going for it.
I think other words should be banned. Things like you have to be passionate about a role.
Yeah. I've never been passionate about a role.
No. Apart from a sausage roll.
Well, yeah, but I don't think I would be passionate. I've never been passionate about a job. I've thought it might be vaguely interesting, but not passionate. No, I agree with you. Yeah. I don't know if I think energy and enthusiasm, perhaps I did. Yes, perhaps there is a point that early on you are more like that. And
yeah.
Hard working though, isn't it? I think energy and enthusiasm is good, but I'm not sure when I have people, if they were like that, I would be, it's not exactly what I want. I don't want too much enthusiasm in my team. I want diligence, hard work, that sort of thing I want. And I've
also worked for people that are far too enthusiastic.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
And they just don't have any, and they're the type of people don't actually settle on one idea. They will just be going, they'll have 5 minutes on this. Right, we've got to do this. This is it. This is the one thing. And then 3 days later into doing some work around that, they've read another magazine article and now they're doing something completely different.
They often don't shut up, do they? The enthusiastic people. And I think you've got to have a balance. Yeah. So that's not a bad idea, but I don't know why it relates to the over 50s particularly.
No. Have you found any other words that with different meanings in job ads?
I have. I've just lost.
I was tearing you up then. like a
I've got
professional.
it. Don't worry, it's all fine. It's fine. So, all in the extensive research we do for this show, I have looked up on Google nonsense John, and we did find something that was quite funny. So, one of the top ones was, which often you do see in ads, is duties may vary, which is translated as 50% of the job will be what it says on the ad, and the rest would put you off applying. And then there's opportunity of a lifetime, translated as it's a job. And this is a real one. I know this comes out a lot. Excellent interpersonal skills. Are you going to get on everyone's nerves and cause trouble? Happy to dive in at the deep end. We haven't got time to train you.
Yeah, they're good.
These are good, realistic. They're good, actually. I think.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. The ability to multitask. You'll be doing 3 people's jobs, but we'll pay you for just one.
It's great.
Yeah, I think we're straying into dad joke territory, though. So yes.
I do like it. I think we're going to let's press that button and draw a line under that that news item. But I do like it. I think it's good. Maybe we'll come back and revisit this after we've done some more extensive research. But
we will. Yeah, we're going to be looking out for them now.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So also on a more serious note, innovating in a pandemic. This is fairly new, isn't it? Out of the CII, and you spotted this one.
Hot off the press. I think it's only come out last week. My eagle eyes picked it up. It's a group that's done a bit of work before, and we've quoted it on the show before. So the London Market New Generation Group, which, as it infers in the title, this is younger people doing this. And they write these nicely produced reports with these slightly strange visual representations. But anyway, it's probably done by enthusiastic and energetic people, I guess.
I was just going to say that.
We wouldn't bother.
It does have a veneer of enthusiasm and energetic.
Yeah. As an over 50, I would just not bother with that. Just put the title on and that's it. You can forget the rest of it. Anyway, so the report's good. It's about the London market, and that's what we like to talk about. So it gives really a fairly downbeat view, actually, sadly, and probably realistically, of any innovation that has happened. And I pick out one chart that I think is rather telling, actually. So they've done a lot of interviews in their enthusiastic and energetic way. And they've come up with, this is all that they got, really, which is these 3 things were what people could tell them about was innovation post-pandemic. Now, most people said, unsurprisingly, that the pandemic has accelerated the rate of innovation. I don't know that people really know that. And then, but you look to the right, and it's increased electronic trading, which was forced, and syndicate in a box, which I think there have been maybe 3 or 2, 3 if we're being generous. And this thing that it's good, it's jolly good, but it doesn't feel to me like anything like a major innovation, a product to ensure the COVID-19 vaccines. It was brought out quite quickly. I think the Lloyd's Lab had something to do with it. It's fine, but is this it? This is all we've got coming out. It's very little. And they say the same. They say it's quite disappointing, really, and that they pull a few more findings out about, which we know about, really, which is that people don't get communicated to about innovation. People don't talk about it. There's no commitment to innovation. They draw rightly attention to that as being detrimental in terms of attaching young talent to the market, and said it's that it's something that they would like to change, and CAI would be very supportive of any initiatives on innovation. But it's not a very positive report, and they say at one point, I think they talk about how what may look like radical innovation to people in the London market is pretty much normal stuff for everywhere else. And I just should say that all of these people on this group, of which there are about 10 energetic and enthusiastic people, they are all from big mainstream organisations in London market. Some of them, Marsh, Talbot, Aegis, and so on. So I'd say to them, great report, but sad in a way that this is the conclusion, which is that there's a lot more needs to be done, and little being done. And we've really said some of this ourselves, you know.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? And I think one of the problems that with that first pie chart there around, do you think the pandemic has accelerated the rate of innovation? I mean, innovation for one person is, as you were saying, is not innovation for somebody else. So to be able to use the Teams is not, you know, the great innovation of the last 2 years.
Do you know what, though? I mean, there is a funny point to this about that energetic and enthusiastic point, is that perhaps it's true that people are more optimistic when they're younger and they're less cynical. I think that may well be true in my case, now that I'm so jaded. But this is a report written by young people in the market who have wished to have written a report that had lots of positive stuff about what was happening and what was going on, and they've had to write a report which is very downbeat, and I think that's really sad. And it's an indictment, really, of the market. If you can't get a bunch of, you know, up and coming talent to feel positive about it.
Yeah, and I'd agree, and I'd agree with you. And the second, you know, my second point, which builds on the pie chart, the 3 areas of innovation: increased electronic trading. Well, I think we've questioned that.
Yeah.
Not just us, but people we've had on the show about whether we are actually genuinely trading electronically. And I think what that means to us is a much more collaborative approach to trading, not just replicating an email transaction or processes. Innovation to me is how you enable people to do their job better and come up with better decisions, come up with creative ideas that have real customer outcomes. And look at these 3 things. I agree with you. It is disappointing, and but I don't know. I am optimistic, though. Having said that, you know, I do talk to a lot of people in the market, as you do, Ben, and I do think there are pockets of real innovation going on. It's just whether they can break through and perhaps use the experience of the pandemic and people perhaps using different ways of working to actually get their ideas across the line and get a bit more traction around it. So although it is a kind of disappointing report when you take it in the round, hopefully there are a few positives on the horizon that we could glean from it.
Yeah, you know. I think the other thing is that the communication, they say this in the report, communication around it and letting people know what is happening in the market in general is quite poor. And I think that's a good point, because it may well be that other things are going on. I used to do the Innovation Awards for Lloyds, and one of the things that was always said there is that why would anybody put in a really interesting innovation into the process for it to be publicised around the market? And so there's an element of competition, but equally, I think in some ways the market needs to find a way of talking about innovation that is compelling and engaging, so that people can start to understand things that are going on. I think that's part of the problem, is that they don't really know how to have that conversation, and I think it could be done quite creatively. So the CII, I think, would be quite good at that. So maybe we'll ask Jonathan, who, you know, obviously got that job partly because he'd been on the show a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how we can boost people's profile.
It gives people that little extra step up, doesn't it? That you need, the edge.
It does, Ben. I've been saying that for years. But
yeah.
Finally, proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to a feature rather than news. And this is getting a third outing. It might be the last time, but anyway, let's play the jingle.
Hey Ben, what's the word on the data stream?
So, what's the word on the data street, Ben, this week?
Right. By the way, you've got to use that at TinTech when I get up on stage. So, insured losses since 1970. So I had a passing conversation in the city yesterday with Bruce Carman, who's been on this show, who's a head of Hive Aero, and he's a good guy and a really good underwriter. And he was mentioned to me about the CAT model and is it really keeping up with catastrophe. So I thought I'd just have a quick look today at the 2021 figures for catastrophes and what's going on. Swiss Re, great source for all this stuff. Their Sigma reports are brilliant. This is showing the losses since 1971. Interesting chart regardless. But what it actually shows is 112 billion of insured losses in the previous year. And that is the fourth highest year on record, and it is showing that ahead of the average, it's about 5 to 6% each year ahead of the previous average losses. So in other words, it's increasing 5 to 6% each year, which is ahead of what they expect, and therefore insured losses are increasing. So Bruce has got a point here about where's the rate increase to cover that, how's the capital dealing with that. So you might argue that more losses. The two major losses last year were Hurricane Ida, 30 billion, and Winter Storm Uri in Texas, which was 15 billion. So pretty major losses, both US losses. And this is important because their figures currently exclude the COVID losses, which they say are longer tail, so they've got to wait, and there's a lot more assessment to be made of those. So on top of this, so this will probably be a couple of years that are way ahead of the others once you put the COVID losses. This is why there are reinsurance issues, I think, which was we talked about some time ago with Stephen Catlin. Mentioning it. So it's bad. It's a good chart about climate change, I think, to some extent, and it's a big, rather important chart for insurance.
Yeah, no, that is really it's a really interesting chart, isn't it? And yeah, you're right about it. It's just interesting, that breakdown, man-made, weather-related, earthquakes, tsunamis, and that trend. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And so
the blue line is obviously is the average. That they keep as a moving annual total, but it shows that over the last few years, since 2017, really, apart from 2018, I think the losses have been ahead quite significantly of the average, which implies they are increasing substantially. Whether the rates are keeping up with that, I suspect not.
We shall see, won't we, when those reports come in?
I presume a lot of those man-made losses now are would be cyber type things as well, perhaps.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, 2001 World Trade. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, that would be World Trade Center, the World Trade 2001. Yeah.
And then. Yeah, but I'd just be quite fascinated just to get a bit more of an in-depth look. Just take those pink ones and see how that changed.
You can get it. I think that you can see 2008 there. I think that's financial crash where there were more man-made losses. That will be presumably D&O and things at that time.
No, it's a great chart actually, Ben. Really.
Well, I remember 2011. I mean, in our data, in research terms, it was a heavy hit on the market. Really was, and you can see it there. The tsunami, huge Japanese tsunami was major loss. Thai floods. Oh, there's Thai floods, wasn't it? Japan, earthquakes, Thai floods. Yeah, God, that was a terrible year. Terrible year.
Yeah.
But
Good. Right. Well, thanks for that, Ben. As I say, we'll keep an eye on that. Might see if we can dig out those figures for the man-made one and see how those risks have changed.
yes.
So, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? We're going to talk a little bit about TinTech. As I said at the top of the show, back to being a real-world event, and that's not the right slide. And yeah, looking forward to getting back to conferences again. We ran our first conference obviously in October before Omicron, which was a great success. So we've been on the edge of our seats wondering what was going to happen with this event. But anyway, it's all going to take place. That's great. So we just thought we'd pick out a couple of sessions to kind of preview it. All the details are on the website if you want to have a look. But I just thought, picking up on the Blueprint 2 and the Lloyd stuff that we were talking about in the news today, we've got a couple of sessions looking at that. I think what's interesting to link it with the news is that Bob James is going to be at the event and give us an up-to-date kind of insight into their thinking and perhaps answer some of the questions. And I know that I spoke to Stephen Card yesterday, and I think he's going to be pretty forthright in his questioning and just in terms of the general direction of travel, and then picking up on the speed and pace of change as well. And then in the afternoon, we'll be able to pick up on all those things. And we've got a pretty good panel who know more about this than we do, Ben.
Yeah. Carbon syndicate in the box, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think he's very frustrated about the data element of it. Thinks it's far too complicated and would like something much simpler. But I think he has deeper, more fundamental concerns about that. And I think Chris Reed on the right-hand side in the afternoon, he's a great guy because obviously representing AXA, a big player in the market, and still, again, has some fundamental questions. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how those two sessions pan out with that kind of update in the morning and then give us a better time to digest it and then have a discussion in the afternoon about it. And see how things pan out. So,
good. Yeah, it'd be good. That's really
good sessions there. And then, we just thought we'd highlight this one because Caroline Wagstaff, we've spoken about Caroline's initiatives at London Market Group in the past, especially about trying to get new talent into the industry. We're kind of linking this up as well with what the office will look like in the London market as we go forward, now that as of today the work from home guidance has been lifted, and whether we will see that influx and what the operating model will look like and what those relationships will look like and how she sees it panning out. So I think that'll be an interesting one as well.
Yeah, good session. I spoke with someone one of the people who has been on the show before, but won't kind of name names, but talking about the future and said, really, I don't think he's saying nobody knows really what's going to happen. It's really difficult to call it. So it'd be good to get people to be talking about that because it's uncertain. Although by the time perhaps we get to this, it will be more certain. So
I also feel it needs leadership. It can't just be left to drift. And so if we decide, and by we I mean players in the London market, that actually there is a value to face-to-face, that's how we get the best deals, and all the rest of it, and actually the technology to support it looks like this, then that needs to be, that won't just happen. It needs to be pushed through from the top and have people driving that, because otherwise it will drift away and seep away. So interesting to.
And I think Caroline will take it wider into what the implications about the talent, because it isn't just about technology and operational change and things like that. It's really about saying, if you're modernizing a market, does it become more appealing to customers and clients and talent and everyone else and people working in the market? So there's a really important points to be made that are wider than just the tech enablement aspects.
Yep, Good. So that's one other. And then we thought we'd pick out data analytics. So data's obviously a core part of the modernization agenda, but as we've talked about before, underpins all business models really now. And there's Azure Data Stat, that data model that we were looking at earlier as well, it all ties into it. And I think this is going to be an interesting session because Saki, he's a really great guy. He thinks about things strategically and has got kind of data running through his veins. And he can really eloquently put across the challenges that organizations have regards data and the way that it plays into their strategic objectives and operating model. And I think he will be talking quite a bit about whether you've got this kind of defensive strategy, whether you're using data just for reporting, making sure you're in the rules, management information after the event, or are you being more aggressive and offensive with your data? Are you looking for opportunities in the data to create new products, be innovative, as we were talking about at the top of the show, coming up with customer propositions and finding new ways of working, which is where he sits in the argument. So I think that's a fascinating session to be part of. And yeah, I'd just be interested to see what the discussion that comes out of that will look like, how companies see their data strategy and how it fits in with their overall company objectives and purpose, I suppose.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. I think we've not got anywhere because we're not doing it in the right way. I'm pretty sure about that. I think everything that looks boring the way it's done by the London Market at the moment, and Lloyd's modernisation programme doesn't fill me with any interest. I think in anything that you do around change, you've got to get people enthused and energetic. No, you have got to enthuse people. You've got to get them interested. You've got to make them feel there's something worth doing here. And I think that this linear approach and this operational approach to everything kills it dead all the time, because it can only involve people who do that sort of stuff. That's the problem. Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in my earlier career. I was involved in banks where they did these desperate IT programs where they'd go through every single thing to create this, whatever they called them then, functional diagram of the system. But it was just so boring and dull. And there were parts of that had to be like that. I accept the accounting bits and things like that. But nowadays, it doesn't have to be like that, I don't think. And I think we need more of what can we do with what we've got, as opposed to it all has to be perfect. I think the thing we did a few weeks ago about, it just needs to be good, not amazing, and it needs to be 80% there is right on. But there's a seems to me a desperate misunderstanding and almost a sort of purist group of people who are a bit like, this has got to be absolutely the right standards and everything has to be right, and you lot don't understand that type stuff. But if you don't involve the end users and the frontline people in this, you're lost. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think, what did I say? Perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah, it is.
Like that. So there we are. So a few highlights there for TINTEC London Market, and you'll be there, Ben, as well, speaking. I'm speaking. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm not speaking for very long, am I? No, we keep you on a tight leash.
You kept me on a very tight leash. Yes.
Yeah.
Quite right too.
So good, excellent. So anyway, we'll look forward to seeing you there. So to finish off, I am going to do a bit of a book review. So last week you were talking about the Stephen Catlin book, Ben, and how good it was and relevant it still is, even though it's a few years old. I'm going to pick up on this book by Michael Woodridge, which is the story of AI, which looks pretty dull from the outside, but actually it's a fascinating read, and it's a really easy read on the story of something that can be portrayed as something very complicated. And when we did the prediction show in the new year, I predicted that AI might be on the brink of actually becoming, taking the step forward because of various things. I'll come back to that in a moment. But the way that this book is written is that it is a story of a field of research rather than a technology. So a lot of the time when we or consultants or vendors talk about AI, they often talk about it as a solution to a problem, where actually AI is a field of computer science research that has been going on since just after the Second World War. And the narrative around AI, as written in this book, is massive hype followed by even bigger disappointment, as different concepts around trying to get machines to think, be conscious, kind of try and fail, really. And it's interesting. And to be fair, I'm only 2/3 of the way through the book, so I haven't got to what he considers to be the future. But it's great to be able to see the history of this type of technology and way of programming computers to try and solve really quite, for us, simple problems, but for computers are mind-bogglingly difficult to program and achieve. And one of them was just moving 3 blocks around in a certain order with one obstacle in the way. It was just so complicated to do it. Anyway, that's my kind of tip to read if you're remotely interested in AI and don't know where to start. It's a brilliant book, and you can dip into it.
And do you get the sense, Jeremy, from reading this book, that he feels that AI is an important thing that will change the world ultimately?
So,
or is changing the world even?
So yes, it does. So he has numerous examples of, even though the narrative of AI is this huge hype followed by disappointment, along that road there are practical uses of the technology that have changed the world mainly in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And there's still computer algorithms that were written back in those days that are still relevant and useful today, that have improved business processes, that have helped enable new businesses, and they might be quite, on the face of it, quite simple automations, but actually they were quite revolutionary in their day, and they were robust. They've stood the test of time. So I think what's happened, and this is my feeling, is the body of work has got bigger. So the foundations were laid there, and small steps have been made towards AI. But every time a new kind of field comes out, like natural language processing or something like that, suddenly people go, oh my God, it's going to change the world. That's it. All the jobs are gone. We're all going to be subservient to computers.
Right. So he sees it as incremental, is evolution, not revolution.
Yes, indeed.
But that some of it is sticking, and once it sticks, it's there.
Yes.
Because my concept always of AI is, once you've got it in place, then it ratchets up exponentially because of its capability once you found the particular AI solution. But maybe it's not.
Yeah, the Road to Conscious Machines is an interesting title, because I think what it's trying to do is for a machine to be conscious in this book, it's got to be able to kind of give you an answer to a question, almost like a conversation, where you wouldn't recognize that you were talking to a machine. You would just think you might be talking to a human. So that's kind of where this kind of idea of general AI is, which is machines acting as if they are human. Think of Ex Machina, the film.
Machina,
That type of general AI is kind of the holy grail that everyone's trying to get to. But along the way, there have been kind of other fields of AI that have made a big difference in, if you take the medical field, then you can now run a computer program, I think through Watson AI, the IBM thing, where they can put an X-ray in and they can tell whether what's cracked, whether there's heart disease, because they've been able to train the machine on it. So the goal is still there for this general AI that is basically a robot sitting in front of you chatting away.
It's interesting. I mean, it sounds like in some ways it's working more like a series of solutions to particular issues, as opposed to an all-encompassing technology that changes everything about what we do. And you reminded me, I think, of those applications, those medical applications, and particularly in surgery. I think there's a lot of learning that goes on when you slice people up, with machines that actually learn what happens when that happens. They can analyze the blood droplets and things when they're doing that, and that they learn from that, so that next time they do it, they do it differently. I suppose you don't want to be the first one to use it, therefore, just a tip. And but you could see that it's not necessarily as joined up as you think it might be, and that's interesting. Yeah, it's a good book. Yeah. There's another book I read this year called by Ishiguro. What's he called? Anyway, it's called Clara and the Sun, the Nobel Prize winning novelist, and that's about AI, but more in a fictional sense, as to how these machines might be in a situation where they are looking after us or being companions. And I think it's a fascinating book that we might put that one up to talk about. Yeah,
and that's actually quite interesting. So the book by Richard Watson, who's the futurologist who's spoken at a few of the conferences, who's actually a really great guy. He wrote a book called Human versus Digital, or Digital versus Human. And one of the chapters is on companions in digital companions in Japan, because they have such an aging population. And not many nurses to look after them, so they've invested a lot in that type of technology. So the whole thing is fascinating, I think. And the practical applications, I don't know, I feel, like I say, I haven't got to the end of the book yet, but my feeling is that some of these things, coupled with increased computer power and new ways of writing the algorithms, mean it could be at an interesting point of time.
I think my wife would be quite keen on me having a digital companion as I go into my dotage.
Yeah,
I think she'd like that idea.
Yeah, I think I'd like that idea, actually, to have somebody to just bring the car around.
A robot.
Thank you. Yeah, a robot bottle.
A friendly Hoover.
Yeah.
To bring you little drinks and things. Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be right. Yeah.
Great. Well, there we are. That's my book.
Back to reality.
Back to reality. I was just drifting off into a world of a fictional butler. Right. So, what are you doing this weekend, Ben? Anything good?
I'm not doing a lot, actually. I might go out for my first run in 10 years.
Don't do that. That sounds
I know. Dangerous. Well, I've been limbering up for it, as they say, and I've already got a few aches and pains. So I'm slightly trepidation. But I've got a beautiful new pair of trainers, so they've got to be used in anger at least once.
Right. 10 years warming up to a run.
Well, the last thing I did was the marathon, so I haven't done any running since then. I decided it was a bad idea running, but I've decided now, for some inexplicable reason, it's a potentially good idea.
Right.
Anyway,
we shall find out next week whether it is or not.
Yep.
So decorating update. I did decorate the spare room last week.
Right, good.
And we had a new carpet fitted, and now the doors don't shut. So
Circular saw. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
2 words, circular saw.
That's what I'll be doing this week, trying to get the door to shut. Anyway, there we are. Good. Right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We shall see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.